Welcome back to Mass Appeal. Negative self-talk. Often it causes us to feel bad. It can make us feel hurt, angry, or frustrated. But how can we stop this very destructive behavior? So joining us with tips, we have Jeff Londraville. He's the author of The Filter. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks.
It's a phenomenon, I don't know why people do it. Why is it that we always have negative self-talk with ourselves?
Right, this happens so much. If you really think about it, most people's decisions come from a lot of this negative talk. And it really, then they choose something and they say, how did I get here? How did I get into this situation?
Yeah.
And what we want to do is we want to stop the negative self-talk and before we make decisions. What happens a lot though, the reason why people really start talking negative is happen throughout their childhood, usually happens. They're programmed this way. Whether it was a parent, whether it was someone on the playground, whether they heard it, whether they discovered something they weren't good at, or someone said something that they weren't good at, and then they took that as, I'm not good at this, I'll never be good at this, and they really got weak from it if no one built them up. So it really can go a bad way for kids, so we have to be very careful how we speak to them.
It's so funny that you say that. When I was young, I realized that I couldn't sing. And since then, I've had this phobia of singing anywhere at any time because I never thought I could do it. So I never made an attempt to get myself better at it. I just let it slip away. And now it's something that, oh, it's terrible. We have a bunch of tips, though, that are going to make everybody out there feel a little bit better. But first, don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to your very best friend.
Right. You know, the main thing about negative self-talk, the main thing to get away from this whole talk is, how do you then separate yourself? So giving yourself room. Now, what does room mean? Room means from your thoughts. So if you automatically say, oh, here's a math problem. Oh, I'm not good at math. I've always been bad at math. I'm dumb. Suddenly you start going on this rampage of negative self-talk. If you give yourself space, and this is what I mean by space, you actually go, okay, now think to yourself, be aware of it, and then think to yourself, what would I tell a friend? What would I tell somebody that probably isn't good at math, but I don't want to rank on them. I'm not a rude person, and I'm not going to disrespect them. Don't disrespect yourself. Try to think of yourself as your best friend, because what you really are is your best friend. If no one cares, if you don't care about yourself, no one else is going to care about you.
And there's also that constructive criticism, too. You might not be good at math, but don't let that stop you. Use that as a jumping off point to get better at math or whatever you don't think you're good at. This next one seems counterintuitive to me, but you're supposed to write down the negative self-talk you just said to yourself.
Right. And what writing down does is it makes that space. So instead of jumping into the emotion of I'm no good or that kind of stuff like that, what we want to do is we have a thought. We go back to what we're programmed as a person. We're programmed as in we're not good at this. So then start talking negatively to yourself about it. Okay, stop that. How do you stop that? Whether you write it down, whether you give yourself space. And sometimes when you write it down, it's all about perspective, it's all how you see things. When you write it down, you look at it and go, why would I say this to myself?
You're right.
But when you're moving in your thoughts, in your mind, you don't have time to say that. You're automatically feeling bad, and you're attaching an emotion to what's going on, when really you're really being unfair to yourself if you really think about it. Now you've talked negative about yourself, now you're feeling bad about yourself, and now you're actually showing that to the world that you feel bad about yourself. No one wants to hang out with you if you feel bad about yourself.
It's a depreciating cycle.
Because you don't want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
So why would someone else want to hang out with you? So you really want to watch it and give yourself space. However that works for you, whether it's writing it down, whether it's thinking about it, being aware. But this is what we need to do so we don't get into other situations in our future.
I love the writing it down thing because, it makes you stop and think. And sometimes when something's written out on paper, you're right. You look at yourself and you say, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a different perspective.
That's so silly. It's in a different lens, even though it's still you. Next thing, take a break from social media. Yeah,
social media is strange. You know, we see this especially in kids these days. You know, they believe everything they see in social media. Everything's fact. Of course, a lot of it's not. And whether it's on the internet, whether it's on TV and stuff like that. So then they believe a certain thing. So what you want to do is separate yourself from social media. Try to have your kids separate from social media. The reason being is spend time with yourself and get to know yourself. Get to actually talk well to yourself. Actually, what bothers me, what doesn't bother me, what can I do about it? You really want to do that, because if you escape into social media all the time and you throw on a ridiculous show like the Kardashians or something like that, you're now in their life. And you're thinking about their life. And it's easier for you because now you don't have to face yourself. So you can just be entertained by them and their lives. That's why reality shows are so popular right now.
People want to escape.
People want to escape, and they want to escape into other people's lives because they can't face their own. And what happens is you stuff it down, and then your own life comes out in different ways.
Great point.
And you want it to come out in the right ways. So escape is sometimes good in small doses, but you got to deal with what's going on in your mind and your heart, because if you don't, it's going to come out either way, and it's going to either make your life better or worse.
You know where I find myself doing a little bit of negative self-talk? This was dawning on me as you were talking. You'll go on Facebook and you'll see someone's status, and they'll say something like, "Oh, just did great on this test," or just adopted a dog, had a kid, and you measure yourself up against their Facebook status.
Very true.
When that's only such a small part of their life, and you don't know everything
Right.
else that's going on.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? In a lot of my speeches, what I give people, I say, you know, we talk so negatively to ourselves, and we're unfair to ourselves, really, if you really think about it. We think all these things are fact. And I use this example all the time. I've played shortstop my whole life in baseball and softball and stuff like that. I go, if I compared myself to Derek Jeter, I'd lose every time.
Oh, yeah.
But if I look at Derek Jeter and say, how can I learn from him? What has he done in his craft that made him better? How does he move? How does he hold his glove? How do he throw? If I look at it that way, then I can improve my life, improve myself. And it's just an example as being that position. But if I compare myself, now I'm feeling bad about myself. I'm not good enough. Don't do that to yourself. It's so unfair.
And by thinking about it, though, you bring us to our last point. Unfortunately, we're real low on time, but it's to formulate your intentions going forward.
Right. You got to know what you want before you get there. So formulate the right intentions. Negative self-talk sets up failure. And you don't want to set up failure, you want to set up success. You have control over this more than you think you do. So watch what you're talking about, give yourself space, separate yourself with the emotion and your intelligence to actually say, okay, do I want this? And if I do want this, how am I going about it? So really, again, it comes down to separation. Try to be easy on yourself and control your future, because you really can in many, many ways.
And you're the only one that can help yourself.
That's right.
Jeff, thank you so much for stopping by.